What are some ways to purposely plan and add in engineering effectively into your STEM lessons? I feel like the engineering side might be one of the easiest ways, but there are some tips and tricks that I like to do when I'm really focusing on the building aspect. We are continuing our STEM in Action series where we kicked it off with guest experts in the field to help connect together different elements of STEM. And for the second half of this series, I'm sharing my insights with you and some practical lessons that you can implement in your classroom. Welcome to the Elementary STEM Coach Podcast, a show that'll help you with lesson ideas, systems, and actionable tips to apply to your classroom. I am your host, Naomi Meredith, a former classroom teacher turned current STEM teacher and coach. With over a decade of experience teaching and a master's degree in STEM leadership, I am here to coach you throughout the year to help you gain back more time to create innovative experiences for your students. Grab your earbuds and let's get started. In the last episode, I zoned in on technology. The one before that, I zoned in on science. So if you haven't listened to those episodes, go back and check it out. You didn't have to listen to them before you hopped in on this one. No worries at all. But we are going to get into that engineering side. As the summer might be in full swing, or maybe it's winding down for you and you are thinking about back to school, and how can you really focus in on what do you need to do for your classroom? I have my on-demand STEM Teacher 101 course where I walk you through the whole process of setting up your classroom, what types of lesson plans you can have in your space, and then some other things to think about, like grouping students and having them collaborate effectively. Now, based on requests from you guys, I actually am splitting up the whole STEM Teacher 101 course. So you can take it as a whole, or I'm actually breaking apart the lessons and adding in some updates as I'm going through them, where you can zone in on something specific. So the course is way more effective if you do it on your own. But if there are some certain things you need to zone in on, like how to set up your classroom, what type of checklist should I use as a teacher before the kids even arrive, all of those segmented lessons are actually being uploaded on my TPT shop, Teachers Pay Teachers shop, Naomi Meredith. So you can go and check that out. At the time of this recording, all of the first module, so it's module 2, module 1's like a whole other thing. But the actual lessons in module two are all up there in my TPT shop. So definitely a way for you to gradually get into the course or just pay as you go. But it's a great way, again, to zone in on those lessons that you're looking for. All right. So when it comes to engineering, I feel like engineering, again, is one of those things that might be the easiest to think about in STEM. And I want you to keep in mind when I'm going through this series that we're not isolating all of the letters in STEM where you're only doing engineering or you're only doing technology. You're really focusing on all of this, but maybe you are highlighting one a little bit more than the others. So even think about when I talk about this series, if you're spelling out STEM, STEM, each episode is like the capital letter. So we have all lowercase in the word STEM, and then E is going to be capitalized in this episode. So I want you to think about it that way. And if you're like, why are you not doing an art lesson? Well, the way I also explain it to my students is there's always an element of art in STEM. You always have that creativity. You're always thinking about that side of things. And in the business world, they actually call it STEM. So that's why I use STEM, but I'm really not ignoring that art piece. Trust me, I'm all about making things look nice and being creative and thinking about that side. So it's not going away. So for this episode, like the other two, science and technology, I'm going to talk through the standards to really think about, my top favorite tools, and then some lesson plan ideas. Now, if you're thinking, oh, well, STEM doesn't have any standards, especially engineering, it actually does. In fact, if you do look at your science standards, There are some standards that actually talk about building a model or creating a solution or building to solve a problem. Those words are in there in your science standards. So if you go back and listen to the science episode, I talk about this too. But if you go back and listen, go through your science standards, look at those standards that have those keywords. Some of the science standards are going to lend themselves really well to science experiments where you are testing variables and seeing the outcome. But then some of the standards are going to work better for an engineering design process challenge to build and solve a problem. So really, really look at those keywords. They're written in a way for a reason. My other favorite standards when it comes to that engineering piece, and I actually use this for almost all of my lessons, is the Next Generation Science Standards that talk specifically about the engineering design process. If you're not familiar with this process, it is a process that real engineers, like legit real engineers use to build and solve a problem and go through the iteration process. Again, it is different than the scientific method, but both are very important. I do have a poster that I use repeatedly to support this process when I'm teaching in my classroom and in my community programs that I teach STEM. And so I actually blew up the poster at Walgreens. Fun fact, you can do that. If you don't have a poster maker at your school, it was like maybe $10. But I actually was able to send the image to Walgreens virtually and blow it up in a nice, pretty poster. And I'm looking at it right now where you can hang that up year long. And then I also display it digitally, but that's a nice little hack too. So become familiar with an engineering design process. It is really important and actually is how you will design these challenges, whether they're multi-day or a one-day challenge. When it comes to those top tools, there are a lot of things, especially if it's reusable items and makerspace. I have a lot of favorites, but let's really get into my absolute favorites. If you're thinking about the things that are consumable and working with those materials that you use over and over again, here's what I really like. For cardboard, I love the thin cardboard that is on cereal boxes and snack boxes. I am constantly collecting this cardboard all the time. My teacher, honey, knows to save this cardboard for me. There's like a spot on our counter that he will place this type of cardboard for me. And I actually, before I take it anywhere, I cut it up into pieces so that it actually forces students to build with it and not use it as an entire box. I also have a drawer in my home office where I store the cardboard, and when I need it, I will grab as I need. I also did this in my classroom where I had the cut up pieces and we use those pieces as we needed. So that is my absolute favorite thin cardboard. I had 600 plus students and I was the only one bringing in recycled cardboard and I always had enough. You use a lot more of that type of cardboard than you think. So as you start collecting it, you're going to be really, really shocked. I also really like if you are using thicker cardboard. I didn't use this very often, but if you do, like Amazon box cardboard, I do like investing in cardboard saws. There are different versions. So Make Do is a very popular one that is made for kids. There are, I think it's Canary or something, but double check. There are brands that are better than others for kids. Be very careful. I only let third grade and up use these. I have heard horror stories about kids slicing their hands. So if you're scared of that, just use regular scissors and that's okay. Along with that, I do love masking tape. The kids eat it, I swear. If you follow me on Instagram, you know I have a whole thing with masking tape. The kids love using tape, and I think it's because they're not allowed to use it at home. My parents don't let me use tape very often, and so I know the kids are like obsessed about the tape. So I have a lot of parameters around tape, and I do limit tape use, and I make baby tape rolls where I wrap them around a popsicle stick, the amount they're allowed to have. I've also seen teachers with masking tape take a ruler and they put a piece on a ruler, like a 12-inch ruler, and that's all they have, which is a really good way to measure as well. But I haven't found a brand I really love. honestly, the projects don't last, very, very long. So I just try to find the cheapest masking tape I can find. Sometimes that's on Amazon, or I've also had luck at Dollar Tree finding name brand masking tape. So that's just something I'm always seeming to buy. I also like for hot glue guns, again, your choice is finding low temperature hot glue guns. There is a brand that I will link for you. Um, if you get these types of hot glue guns, again, I used it for second grade and up or third grade and up, depending on the year. Make sure you're buying low temperature hot glue gun sticks. If you're using the regular sticks, they won't melt at the speed, and like the melting point is different, and then they will get clogged. So that's where you will run into issues. So I do have a favorite, and somebody actually just asked me about this on Instagram. So I sent her a DM, and then I also have a hot glue gun poster you can use in your classroom, which I know Kelly from Mathematically Enthused, she framed them and put in her classroom, which was super cute. And then consumables, I love using math manipulatives. I always go shopping at the end of the school year or at the beginning of the school year in the teacher hallways and find old math manipulatives that they're getting rid of, or they're from an old math kit. I always started collecting those. I also recently found at Target in the Target dollar spot, they are those Unifix cubes. They're a different brand. They're not the Unifix cube brand, but I found those stacking cubes at Target. It was like $3 for a pack. I bought a few packs to have on hand. And then I also found some other cool things too. So if you're listening to this in real time, that's a good place to check. They also sometimes have those hashtag blocks. So those are some of my faves. Okay, for lesson ideas. What should you focus on? If you really, really want to focus in on engineering as your main goal, and then all the other standards come underneath that, what could you do? So I have a project idea that could last multiple days, a STEM station idea, and also a 1-day challenge. For projects, and this works perfect for summertime and back to school, is my entire STEM survival camp. Um, I'm obsessed about this unit, and I've actually met some teachers at ISTE who used STEM Survival Camp and loved it. So, episode 4 of this podcast, I talk all about STEM Survival Camp. So you can actually listen in on every single challenge. But if you were to only do one of the 6 challenges, the Build a Shelter challenge is very, very popular, and students have to build a shelter to withstand the elements. So they really are focusing on the engineering piece where they have to create a strong structure that can withstand the wind, that can prevent the items inside the shelter of getting wet, and also ensure that no snow gets in their shelter. So it is all about that engineering and looking at other ways that real shelters are designed with natural elements to create it. For a STEM station, this one is a really fun one, and I always had these on hand. I printed all of them out just in case if I had a sub, but I also like to display it digitally on the board. Or I've also seen teachers print these out and put them on the key rings and have them at a STEM station so students can pick and choose what they wanted to build from, but they are my engineer inspiration board. So tons of themes. There's themes for holidays, different occasions, every single month, but there are about 9 items that are centered around this theme, and it's to give inspiration of different things that go along with the theme that kids can build using any materials on hand. So it's very, very low prep if you just get these ready ahead of time, or I would just pull it up on my screen. If you get them ready ahead of time and you need a last minute lesson or a fast finisher, we know the younger kids can be hit or miss with the timing and also depends on the class, then you can pull out some of those manipulatives or Lego bricks and they can build however they would like. So it's giving them inspiration to connect to that theme. You can have them plan and go through that process, but it's really about being inspirational and having those different ideas. And for a 1 day lesson, a lot of us are diving into those 1 day lessons, or your schedules have changed, or maybe you're starting to implement STEM Fridays this year. This one was really popular. I've done this as a STEM kit that I did take home kits at my school. And then also recently taught it this summer with some kids. And this was like one of the most favorite ones, but it's a paper plate marble coaster. I guess you have to buy paper plates, which isn't terrible, but I did buy those cheap, flimsy paper plates that are easier to cut. And we talked about how roller coasters are designed with the biggest hill has to be the largest, and then how things can connect and go that way. So kids really love that one. We used some cardboard building techniques and used cardboard tubes and taught them a strategy of how to set up the cardboard tubes so that they're sturdy and are able to stand still on the ground. So if you cut slits on the end of a tube and fold them back and then tape down the tube, it's called a phalange. I'm pretty sure I have a video on my YouTube channel about that, just how to make one. But I showed them that strategy because it really increased the stability of their coaster. So this one's a really fun one. They're only allowed to make their coaster the width of 2 sheets of construction paper, or I did 2 sheets of cardstock paper, and they taped those together as their base so that they're able to carry their marble coaster with them. And then it's not tied down to the table, and it actually uses less supplies. So that one is a really popular one. I actually typed up all of the directions, have a video, and have the science behind it. So if you are thinking about like a 1 day lesson or an after school club, or you want that parent home connection, that is available too. As a recap in this lesson, we talked about the standards that go along best with the engineering side of things in STEM. I gave you my recommendations of top tools to look for and have in your space, and then also some lessons that could be a longer project, STEM stations, or a 1 day lesson. All of the things that I talked about that are lesson specific, you can find them inside of my TPT shop, my Teachers Pay Teachers shop, Naomi Meredith, and those will be linked in the show notes. Always feel free to reach out to me by way of email or send me a DM on Instagram. I can also send you the link if you're like, wait, what was that you were talking about? But these are some things that my students have definitely loved and things that I use over and over again in terms of tools and lessons that I know will be successful in your classroom. Can't wait to hang out with you next week for the last episode in this specific series where we're going to be talking about all things math. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Elementary STEM Coach Podcast. I would love to connect with you over on Instagram at Naomi Meredith _ or send me an email to elementarySTEMcoachpodcast@gmail.com. Also, make sure to check out my website, naomimeredith.com, to see all the show notes from today's episode and shop my K-5 STEM resources. Any questions you have, needs for resources, or ideas for episodes, get in touch. I'll talk to you soon.